Being an educator is one heck of a lonely journey, but every step holds a story, an experience that shapes how we teach, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Educator Experience. I'm your host, Salli Carter, and together we'll explore the moments that define us as educators. Through authentic conversations and shared experiences, we're building a community that connects, reflects, and inspires, all while breaking down barriers in education, one story at a time. You are not alone. Let's grow together. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Educator Experience podcast. Today, we're exploring the incorporation of resilience and overcoming adversity in our teaching practice. I'm your host, Salli Carter, and joining me is Sarita Parmar. Sarita is a powerful workshop facilitator and coach specializing in mindset and wellness. She thoughtfully combines her personal journey of resilience and empathy with her professional expertise in business, thus creating an inspiring and transformative experience for her audience. And Sarita, I know from our offline conversations that you are a lover of quotes. So I was hoping to start with one that you feel kind of captures your essence by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it's, what lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And I'm curious what the impact and power of these words are for you.
First of all, thank you so much for having me and congratulations on the podcast. Super excited to be here. I'm absolutely a lover of quotes. And that quote that you shared is hands down my favorite. And I am going to say, well, you know what? I'm going to be turning 45 in August. And I was something before I started listening to my insides. Prior to that, it was, like many of us, especially women, especially the daughter of immigrants, it's, listening to noise around you, it's cultural programming, societal conditioning. And yeah, it took me 30 some years. And it was shortly after I became a mom. And I started listening to my insides. And, we've had offline conversations and I shared the little story on my website with you. But I was born, my parents are from India. I have lost both of them. And so I remember when my dad passed away in 2003, it probably took me about 5 years before I could talk about him without crying. Um, Years after, we lost my mom to ovarian cancer. I'm the oldest of four girls. I also went through a divorce. I also went through breast cancer. And so all these life experiences, as cliche as it sounds, it definitely teaches you something. It helps you reshift your perspectives on what is important. And I have to say, it comes with age and it comes with experience. Well, I can still consider myself young. I am young. So uh, my daughter
You're
will
vibrant.
disagree. She
Yes,
calls me old. She's
absolutely.
like, you're like 50. And I say to her, I'm digressing a little. And I say to her, you know what? When I was 20, I used to think 40-year-olds were old. I said, now that I'm 45, I realize
I
how
know.
wrong I was. But of course, I plan to say that when I'm 80, so irrelevant. But I couldn't on about the quote. And at the end of the day, whether it was going through breast cancer or whether it was going through a divorce in a culture that doesn't believe in divorce, and you're listening to all this noise that's happening outside of you, it delays your decision. And I learned that the hard way. It delays it
Mhm.
because you give value to someone else's opinion, more value than you give yourself, more credit for yourself, especially those of us who grew up like people pleasers. And so even, whether it's a health journey somebody's going through, too often we give our power away to the man or woman in that white coat because they said it must be, and we don't really listen
Mhm.
to that. And I have to say, going through those things and even in my day-to-day events, knowing that everyone has something to teach us, right? And they could be saying all the right things. And I've
Mhm.
experienced many of these times in my life as well, where people are saying the right things. And on paper, it sounds good. But yet there's this nagging feeling. And you're just like, I don't know if that works for me. And I'm learning to pay attention to that feeling. And so the so called professionals will tell you, right? This is the right way. This is the only way. And screw that. There isn't just
Mhm.
one way to do things. Everyone you come into contact with, whether you're sitting in a classroom, an auditorium full filled with people listening to you, a friend, a neighbor, everyone knows something you don't know. And to think, hey, I'm the expert and I know
Mhm.
better. No, you don't. So I think that's where the empathy piece comes in as well.
And so, how does your journey, so the various journeys that you've been on and your empathy aspect, how does that play into the workshops that you offer?
The other thing is showing up authentically. Like growing up in the corporate world,
Mhm.
that's another type of conditioning. You have to be professional and this is right, this isn't. And sometimes we put on a little bit of a mask. And people see through that. People see when you're being genuine and when you're not. And at the end of the day, whether again, I'm doing a business loan from back in my banking days and a client is opening up to me about their life and their business journey, they're not going to share things with me unless they like me, trust me, and respect me. And I think in order to earn that, and that's the thing, it has to be earned. You just have to show up real as you are. And not everybody will be your fit.
Mhm.
I've facilitated workshops. I used to work for a nonprofit. Now I, do my own through my business. And you show up and you just be real. And some people are going to be your cup of tea and some aren't. But most people will respect the fact that you're showing up authentically. And they also respect the fact that this person is giving me space to share my feelings. I've had many people disagree with me. I've shared something
Mhm.
in a workshop and somebody speaks up and they're like, hey, I have to push back on that. Hey, I have to disagree. And I'm like, bring it. Yeah, yeah, share. And I think, and just that fact that I think I allow that space, lets people know, hey, it's okay. I'm here to learn and she's learning too.
You really hit on something here, that there is a shift in educators and professionals in general showing up authentically. That wasn't the way it was
Yeah.
when I was in school. I didn't know anything about my professors or people I was in workshops with or my managers. They kept it all really like things to themselves. And I'm not advocating for sharing everything about one's life, but particularly when you're giving a workshop, there are certain things that can help us feel or open an idea of connecting with the audience that has creates or an opportunity for an even bigger impact, right? It's more than just content that we're delivering, it's connection, it's community, it's beyond just that regular information. And I think the more comfortable that our audience feel, they're more open to sharing
Yeah,
their
I agree
experiences,
100%. And
right?
that's
As
very
well.
well said. And you know what? I've also learned, I've been an oversharer in the past when I was a bit more naive and ignorant, let's
Mm.
say. One thing I've also learned over the years is not everybody deserves your vulnerability. And so when you're talking in a professional setting,
Right.
it's not like, hey, this is who I am, and F this and F that. Mind if I light up a cigarette? Like, obviously, there's a time and a place. You have to balance, stay professional, but don't hide who you are. And I think you said, even like, when we were growing up, and I've got a 15, almost 16-year-old daughter, and I communicate with her teachers. She comes home
Mhm.
and shares things with me. And I feel things are a little bit different, where you can talk and teachers are a little bit more accepting of different situations. Where when I was growing up, and I'm sure you'll relate to this as well, it's that position of authority. Do not
Mhm.
challenge. You're here to learn. And as horrible as this
Absolutely.
sounds, Sally, I came across something that compared schools to prisons. You have to show up at this time. You have to eat at this time. You have to do
Yeah.
XYZ at this time.
Yep.
And it does make me question, it's like, you do that, then you move into, say, is it the corporate world or another job, and then someone else dictates to you what you need to do. And, at my daughter's high school, they have an entrepreneurship class I encouraged her to take. And I'm really happy I did. And she's happy as well. And so I think it's really, really important to
Hmm.
teach that generation, all generations, not what to think, but how to think.
I appreciate that. And then I think something that you said really stuck with me too is um, that not everyone deserves our information or our authenticity, and to really try to feel out the types of connections that we want with our audience, and
Yeah.
to, I'm assuming, also
Hmm.
build a rapport too, right? As opposed to just walking in and sharing your journey. So I teach a lot of business classes, and failure is a part of business. It just is. So to be able to share the resilience piece of being an entrepreneur, I think is very, very
Yeah,
important. But there's
absolutely.
always a time and a
So,
place,
one thing I
right?
will say is I think, always show up as your authentic self, but how much information you're choosing to share, keep that audience in mind, you know? Again, it goes back to, you don't want to be
Hmm.
oversharing, but time and a place for everything. But, you talked about connection earlier, and you use that word. I think that's a really powerful word. And I think what helps material stick and what helps connection are stories. And so, I use stories, and they're not necessarily
Hmm.
my own. And sometimes I'll use someone else's story with their permission or anonymously to help certain points stick. And back in my banking days, like I always joked, I've worked with small business owners, small to medium sized businesses, probably for about 20 years now. So I still do some business coaching as well. Um, and one of the things is, I used to joke with my accountant friends that it's your job to put the financial statements together, and it's my job to rip them apart. Large part of what I
Hmm.
used to do when I was in business banking was, if you came to me as a business owner and said, hey, I want a $1 million loan, I'm taking the information I need and making a case and presenting it to the bank on your behalf. Basically, anybody can look at the numbers, anybody can look at what you're putting in writing, but it was my job to share the story behind the numbers. Okay, we can see sales went up 25%. What happened there? Is it sustainable? Is it a one off? So I think
Hmm.
stories are amazing. And as you know, like I'm working on building my speaking business, delivering keynote. There's a lot of people call themselves storytellers, and I like
Yep.
that. You share your story. Let there be lessons that help your audience, right? Because, like I said, we can all learn from one another.
Absolutely. And I think that's the difference between perhaps even a good educator and a great educator. A good educator can deliver content and get the information across, but a great educator can finesse it, can relate it back to real life situations that resonate with the audience and the students, and tell stories that make connections that help our brains work in different ways, right? There's so many different ways that showing up authentically, sharing a bit of ourselves, and creating stories from information can
Oh,
really create a positive
100%.
impact for our
And,
audiences, I think.
just speaking of stories and making it relevant to the audience, again, depending on who you're working with. Now, one of the things I like to do is, before I'm going on stage or before I'm delivering a workshop, I like to know who is going to be in the audience, who is going to be in the classroom. And so that might be, before an event, having a conversation with them, and then sort of incorporating a story or an example as I'm up there delivering. Do you know what I mean? It just kind of hits home a little bit. Um, Helps
Hmm.
them. Again, it's like, get the people comfortable. Anybody can read off pages and just share information, but we want information to stick. We want people to take, like with me personally, one of the things that I like to focus on are actionable tips. When you leave, whether it's a virtual lunch and learn, and you end the Zoom, or you leave the doors of this conference or event or workshop, what have you, what are you taking away with you? I could have talked about 20 things. You're not going to take all 20 things away. Even
Mm-hmm.
if you take 1 to 3 items, I say, that you commit to applying. And oftentimes I'll challenge people. I'll say, okay, now put in the chat or put your hand up and tell me what one thing you're going to do. And, and that's the thing. And, with
Mm-hmm.
me, my personal goal is to do my tiny part in making the world a better place because I believe in the ripple effect. I can't solve all the problems of the world by myself, but my hope is if I have a one-on-one conversation or I'm speaking to a group of 20 or 100, I leave them with something that they're walking away with. Because now, if they're going to Costco, they're going to have a friendly conversation with the cashier, and that cashier will talk to the next person. Like in my mind, that's the ripple effect. That's how we make the world a better place. They're going to go home and talk to
Mm-hmm.
their husband, their partner, their children, their neighbors.
The things that you brought up, and especially who you are as a person and wanting to make the world a better place, that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to talk about. And the idea of that all of our
Mhm.
conversations can go further. Sarita, I think that's a perfect way to wind down the conversation. What a beautiful way to end that, to make the world a better place and just create that type of ripple effect. And thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to us about incorporating resilience and empathy into our conversations
Thank
and
you
into our
so, so
classrooms. We really
much.
appreciate your time. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the Educator Experience. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Educator Experience. We hope you're walking away feeling connected, inspired, and just a little bit more supported on your journey. Ready to go a little bit deeper? Join the Educator Experiences community and check out our courses and workshops specifically designed to support new educators as they navigate the ups, downs, and everything in between. You'll find it all at educatorexperiences.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a fellow educator, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Together, we're building a vibrant community rooted in support and connection. See y'all next Monday.